reasons yet to be determined, the bodies of the recently deceased are returning to life and attacking the living. The scope of this...
Yeah, basically, guys, we are a live call-in. It will be reposted probably within a week or so back on YouTube. So by calling in, you allow us to use your likeness without filing DMCAs. That's about it.
Basically, yeah. Texan, you there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, good, man.
Hey,
Welcome
Matt.
to the show, man.
Yo.
So, yeah, the TexasCanadian, he's an awesome YouTuber. I think you've been doing videos now for about 4 months now. And I was watching a few of your videos today. Very good job. And we'll get into your segment a little later on in the show. So he will be joining us for our new segment. So let's get to it, man. Let's get to our first topic here. Just because you're born gay doesn't mean you should act on it. So let's get to it.
Let us go.
And yet you want to prevent them having the same rights to get married as straight people. And that leads me to, I suppose, a more obvious supplementary question. Do you personally believe that gay people are born gay? Or do they become gay? Are they made gay?
Yeah. You know what? I think the jury's still out on that. It wouldn't bother me if there was, quote, a gay gene found, because here's what we know about life. I have all kinds of natural feelings in my life, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I should act on every feeling. Sometimes I get angry and I feel like punching a guy in the nose. It doesn't mean I act on it. Sometimes as you pointed out, sometimes I feel attracted to women who are not my wife. I don't act on it. Just because I have a feeling doesn't make it right. Not everything natural is good for me. Arsenic is natural.
No, but that's why, Rick. That's why I have to jump in again.
Sure.
That is why, though, this is such an interesting debate, because I just believe fundamentally and passionately that gay people are born gay. I don't think you become gay. And I think if you were able to convince yourself that they were born gay, you would see it differently. You would see it as a natural condition that people are gay. And then you may change your mind about their rights to have the same fundamental rights as straight people. But if you still believe that they're not born gay but become or get turned gay, then I can see that you can hide behind that as the justification, if you like, for not endorsing same-sex marriage.
I do not believe attraction is a sin, but I do believe that some actions are sin. I'm not responsible for all of my attractions. We know, for instance, that some people are born with natural predispositions towards certain things, either good or bad. Every one of us have those. I may not. I'm automatically attracted to certain kinds of art, certain kinds of music, certain kinds. I don't think that's a matter of right or wrong. But the Bible clearly states that I am absolutely in control of my actions. And since I have chosen as my authority for my life, not the government, not common culture, anything like that, that treat everybody with dignity, that treat everybody with love, but could disagree on certain issues and still say, you know what, I don't agree with that guy, but I think he has come to his position from his background or from his...
Yeah, I'm like, be honest with you, I'm just so sick of these pastors and these devout Christians that are just trying to intervene or trying to intrude into people's lives because of what they are, you know what I mean? Stop getting involved in people's life with your insane morality issues. Just stay out of it. And it just amazes me. He's comparing the nature of being gay is like taking arsenic. It's like an equivalent to it. It's like, dude, this guy can't be serious. And then when he states like attraction is not a sin, I mean, like, if you look at a woman or a man in lust, it's a sin. Bible verses right here, Matthew 5:28. But I say, anyone who looks at a woman with lust in his eyes has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Job 31:11-12. For lust is a shameful sin, a crime that should be punished. It is a devastating fire that destroys to hell. It would wipe out everything I own. Now, right there, it clearly states that, you know, attraction or lust, having lust for some for a woman is a sin. So that's all I gotta say so far. Negation.
Yeah. No, that's exactly, that's where I would have gone with it too, is that, the Bible is very clear that thought crimes are real. If you think something,
correct.
There's a lot of people who say, why the hell not go ahead and do it, because you're going to burn in hell anyway if you don't get, saved. So, if I'm pissed off at somebody and I think about killing them, as far as God's concerned, I did kill them. So, I mean, across the board, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. And I think that the thing that a lot of people overlook in this is that if you get to the point where we do start to implement these laws, or well, they're not laws, but if we do go down that road and we allow the theocracy to go on, what's going to happen? Well, even if a gay person was able to follow this idiot's rule, if you want to call it that, what that does is mandates that they will never have a family, they'll never have kids, they're going to live their life completely celibate and, for the most part, alone. I mean, that's okay. Just because of the way your God constructed this human being, he's got to admit that if it is, if it is found to be a genetic deal and he believes God makes people, what are you thinking? Then let's go to the next step where how is it going to affect potential kids that are going to be stuck in foster care for their entire life because, there would have been a couple out there that would have been more than happy to raise them in a nice, stable, loving environment. But because of idiots like this, oh, hell no. Those guys can't,
I'd just like to add one thing.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
If anything, the abstinence-only programs in the U.S. have failed, in the world have failed, due to, the mandate that you're just not supposed to have sex at all. And the same goes for gay sex. It goes for preachers, getting their rocks off in hotel rooms with hookers. It's expecting everyone to have self-control when it comes to sex is just asking for disaster. You have to have a better plan than that.
They're just hypocrites. They never put themselves in other people's shoes until it happens to them, and then it's an issue. And that's the problem with this guy here. You know what I mean? It's just an issue until it happens with him. Just like that one Republican out there that had like all these mistresses, and his wife, he told her to have 2 abortions, and he was pro-lifer. He's very predominant in his viewpoint in being a pro-life. But it's okay for him to push that onto society. But when it comes onto him and into his reality, then it's a different viewpoint. Then it's, again, an abortion. So they're just hypocrites. That's all they are. And that's why we bring up stories like this, because it's just sickening to society in general. And that's what we combat, is this type of behavior. It's just ridiculous, man. It really is.
And guys, even though this show is not technically a theme show, over the last couple of weeks, what's been amazing to me, and Matt's provided us with a lot of information tonight, so again, I definitely want to give him big props on that. But what we're all seeing is it seems like there's almost an explosion of some of the most immoral, just asinine things out there, just in the last 2 weeks. So, keep that in mind while you're watching this, and look at the backlash that has happened. And what's the only thing that's happened recently that may cause? Now some of this stuff is not going to be related at all. But this type of thing, I'm saying that I think the religious right is starting to understand that they're losing ground quick, and they're scrambling. It's definitely getting kind of scary out there.
They are. The Tea Party got crushed, and they're scrambling for new ideas. They're saying that they want to change their viewpoint on not discrimination, on immigration and women's rights. They'll probably look into, but they won't make any decision on women's rights, I don't think. But I might come up with the same subjects sometimes. But if you watch the show a lot, I will discuss certain things that are just main issues in the United States, and people just need to know it. So are we good on this? Move on to the next topic.
Yeah, unless, Matt, you got anything else?
Yeah. I just wanted to say that the demographic for the Tea Party and for the religious right in general, the extreme religious right anyway, it's very small. It's a lot of elderly people for the most part. And, as everyone is aware, the minority populations are increasing faster and faster in the U.S., and that means that white people in general are, the population is going down in comparison. So, it's not looking good for them. That's basically all I'm saying.
I believe that the demographics are definitely changing. There's no doubt about that. We know that.
Talks, right?
Constitutional clash now in the Bluegrass state. The state's anti-terrorism bill declares Kentucky citizens need God's help from protection from a terror attack.
Douglas Kennedy is more now from our newsroom. Some atheist groups are not happy. What's this all about, Douglas?
Yeah, Bill, many Americans depend on God to keep us safe and secure. The question is, can that reliance be required by law? The Department of Homeland Security relies on vigilance and fancy new airport screeners to keep Americans safe. But in the state of Kentucky, that's not good enough. Kentucky law now requires that citizens here know it's God that keeps them safe.
Oh, it requires much more than that.
In fact, state law commands the Department of Homeland Security to prominently display this proclamation, which says the safety and security of the Commonwealth cannot be achieved apart from reliance upon Almighty God. Edwin Kagan is a Kentucky atheist and objects to the sentiment.
A law such as this is a step toward establishing a theocracy in our state.
Kagan is now suing Kentucky, claiming it's forcing religion on its citizens as well as a federal agency. He says in violation of the constitutional separation between church and state.
The safety and security of the state cannot be achieved apart from recognizing our dependence upon God.
Tom Reiner is a Democratic state rep and also an ordained Baptist minister. He says there can be no real protection from evil or our enemies without reliance on God.
That has been a part of the American creed. That's why our national motto is "In God We Trust," because ultimately He is our source of trust.
Representative Reiner says trusting God is our national motto, it's our national creed. He says why not simply put it in law?
A motto is not a law.
Reiner says reliance on God is also our national heritage, and he says Kentucky will not surrender that heritage. That's it from here. Bill, back to you.
All right, Douglas, welcome back from the Bluegrass State.
Thank you very much.
Kennedy in New York.
Talks, right?
Fucking amazing, man.
I've got a lot on this, guys. So
yeah, I only got
go
a few things real quick. And negation, and Matt can go. It's so funny how he says that God's going to protect Kentucky, this and that, but, you know, where's the proof of that God has ever protected anybody? I mean, like, we could bring up 9/11, for instance, you know, the attack on 9/11 where almost 4,000 people, that attack was such insanity that where was God to protect them? And then they had the steel structure of the cross. Oh, then it's sign of hope. But where was your fucking God during that attack, you know? Why didn't God protect the people in 9/11, you know what I mean? And I just want to know what their ideology is when it comes to God protecting people or protecting this state. What are some instances where God has protected them? That's what I want to ask this guy. You know, seriously, these people just need to go back to history class. They need to go back to grade school and really, you know, brush up on their history a little bit when it comes to the U.S. Constitution and such. So that's all basically I really got to say on this topic. Go negation.
Okay. I was kind of going to go through the history of it and kind of let people know what's been going on. The thing that shocked me when I started doing research on this is, guys, this has been going on since December of 2008. This is not new by any means. We're pushing almost 4 years now since Kentucky's been pushing for this. And when a group of atheists got together to file this lawsuit, the lawyer said this is one of the most egregious and breathtaking unconstitutional acts by a state legislature that he had ever seen. So it went through that year. It was ruled unconstitutional. Well, I should say the next year because it was 2009. But anyway, basically, the judge agreed and said that, you know, it's absolutely wrong. We can't do this. This is an egregious violation of the U.S. Constitution. But in that same year, because it was in August that they came with the final ruling, they completely reinstated it. The appellate court overruled him right then and put it back into place. Mm-hmm. What the law tells us is that it requires the Office of Homeland Security to publish God's benevolent protective powers in its office. And if the head of that office does not publicly state it and publicly endorse that thing, he literally can be sent to jail for a year. So it's no longer just something that is like, in God we trust on the currency or anything else. This is something that you will stand up, pledge your allegiance as that official, or you'll go to jail. Now, again, the things that are happening, it's just absolutely amazing to me that these people can get away with this. And this last decision was a split decision. On one hand, the two judges that ruled for it were basically saying it's no more than in God we trust. The other one, and I'm looking at her judgment, and it was Ann O'Malley Shake, and what she said is Kentucky's law crosses a constitutional line. Among other things, she said, the law has criminal penalties including 12 months for anyone who fails to comply. That's where the line's drawn. That's where the problem is when you look at the First Amendment and the Establishment Clause, how can you get around that? How can this in any way, shape, or form be constitutional at all? I mean, so...
Well, clearly it's not. We know that. So it's just a fight. When you got to go to court for such issues, like we seen Kitsmiller versus Stover, how long that took. This stuff takes years. And if it goes to federal court, Supreme Court, so on, then then you got a long waiting period for it to be overturned. So it'll get overturned, of course, but it's going to take a while.
And the people there that wrote the law, Reiner was the legislator who added the clause at the end that the Almighty God section to the Homeland Security law. Mm-hmm. And what he says is that I'm thankful for judges who take into account the original, keep that in mind, mm-hmm. intent of the founders when interpreting the intent of the Constitution. Has he not read the First Amendment?
That's why I said these people need to go back to fucking school, man.
But what I'm saying, this is their representative.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy who writes the laws in their state, and he can't even interpret the First Amendment in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It's just the problem we have, and they try to use the U.S. Constitution like it protects them. It's amazing. Matt, you got anything on this?
Yeah. I think that it's fine, actually, if they say that it requires God's protection, that you have to acknowledge that there's God's protection, mm-hmm. so long as they acknowledge that God is Cthulhu.
Exactly. Actually, someone in one article said that. They said, what if it would have been a Muslim person that did this and said, instead of Almighty God, Almighty Allah, it would have got thrown out of office in 2 days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, oh, yeah. Anytime you implement a different God or a different religion, then it's a major problem. Then, it basically gives them the perspective on how insane it is if we incorporate a different religion. So when you incorporate a different religion, then they see how the insanity it is and how insane it is. Like if it had to do with Sharia law in the United States, then it would be like, oh my God, no, we can't have that. And it's just sickening, really, man. I don't know. Anything else? Any closing arguments on this topic before we get to the next one?
I think I cut off Matt. Matt, keep going. Sorry about that, Matt.
Yeah, anything else? Yeah, I think he had a lot to say, he said. Go ahead, Matt.
Did we lose him?
No, he should be here. Matt, you mute it?
Yeah, I was muted, sorry.
Oh, it's okay, go.
What was the question? I was getting a beer.
Yeah, so was I. No, I was going to say, was there anything else you want to say? Because you said you had a few more things on it.
No, I'm good.
You're good? All right.
Yep.
Let's get to the next topic then, and it's going to be, let me get these pictures up here. African children denounced as witches by Christian pastors. So I'm going to read an article here. It's from the Huffington Post. And it states this: the 9-year-old boy lay on a bloodstained hospital sheet, crawling with ants, staring blindly at the wall. His family pastor had accused him of being a witch, and his father then tried to force acid down his throat as an exorcism. It spilled as he struggled, burning away his face and eyes. The boy barely had strength left to whisper the name of the church that had denounced him, Mount Zion Lighthouse. A month later, the child died. He was one of an increasing number of children in Africa accused of witchcraft by pastors and then tortured or killed, often by family members. Pastors were involved in half of 200 cases of witch children, so-called, reviewed by the AP. The 13 churches were named in the case files. Some of the children involved are local branches of international franchises. Their passioners take literally the Bible exhortation. thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. So let's get a little bit into this. I mean, like, this is what happens when you have missionaries going over to these third world countries, over to Africa, going into these towns. These people don't really know too much about religion, and they brainwash the locals with this immoral bullshit, and they're taking them back to the Dark Ages, and back to basically the sound witch trials, you know, and the atrocities that they committed back then. I'm like, this is real life, man. This is current day society this shit's taking place in. You know, seriously, something has to be really done about this. But I want to ask you something, both of you. Do you think anything could be done by stopping these missionaries going over to the third world countries and doing harm like this? You think it could be possible to make some kind of law? Negation?
Matt, I'll let you go in first, man.
Matt?
I think the damage is already done, honestly.
Correct. I agree.
I think that even if you stopped the missionaries and didn't allow any of them to go anymore, the Christianity especially is such a virus that once it gets into a community, it's almost impossible to get out without people curing themselves. I work with some guys from the Philippines, and they are incredibly Christian. I mean, they're like fanatical almost in their level of devotion. What I see in these African countries is that you have roughly the same level of education as people in Middle Eastern countries, comparatively. And when you are convinced that that your holy book is correct, then things like this, I mean, like perfectly correct and the actual word of God, then this is what happens. And that doesn't matter whether it's the Quran or the Bible or whatever. And American Christians, Western Christians, have to keep in mind that although they think that you're not supposed to take, most of them think you're not supposed to take the Bible literally, you're supposed to take it as allegory, there are still these uneducated places in the world where they are taking these horrible atrocities that they're being commanded to do by the Bible, and they're not running it through the filter of secularism that we're using.
Correct. Yeah, it just, we're so far advanced here when it comes to our societies and to, I guess you could say, free thinking and critical thinking, our education systems, and over there, it's pretty much, third world countries, they're not even nearly as quite advanced as we are, so it's easy for these ministries to go over there, these missionaries, I should say, and then go over there and brainwash these people, give them Bibles. Granted, yeah, I can see that sometimes they do good, okay, that's fine, but their main objective is to brainwash these people with Christianity. I mean, that is their main goal. That is just fact. That's what they do, and it's just detrimental to their their civilization over there, their towns, their society in general, local society. It's just so detrimental. It kills them, man. You see people dying because of this shit, and then we go as far as the preventative. They just want to prevent condom use over there in Africa. That's just major bullshit, man. They're losing a lot of lives due to Christianity over there. So that's the sad part about it. Negation?
Yeah, what I've got to add on that is I think Matt's exactly right. I think once you let it out of the bottle, it's going to be extremely difficult to get it back in.
I agree.
That being said, I also think that it's very telling, and I think it's something that we as atheists can use to demonstrate kind of what Hitchens was saying about how religion poisons everything. When you walk into a place that is very limited in their education, don't understand critical thought, have no reference to what the scientific method is, it's very easy to indoctrinate because, again, what this is about is trying to explain what's going on in their world. And in most of these places, their life sucks. I mean, it's horrible. Like I've said, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 times here, they're amazed that we have so much fresh water that we shit in it. I mean, it makes their heads explode to think about that because they're dying because they don't have clean water, and we're shitting in our water and flushing it down the toilet. But the point that I'm making here is that when you have that level of suffering coupled with, and I'm using ignorance here as the way it's defined, not as a derogatory term.
Yeah,
the ignorance, exactly. The ignorance that civilization has as in general, they're looking for anything to grasp on, for hope, to explain what's going on, to make their lives at least a little more comfortable. And this is exactly what the missionaries prey on. What I would love to see, if you want to test a missionary, ask them, why aren't you set up on the doorstep of MIT? Why don't you show up there? Let's see how many converts you're going to get at that school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's in my opinion absolutely proportional to the education. The more intelligent, I shouldn't say intelligent, the more educated the human being, the less likely they are to convert.
Well, that's why they get away with it.
And also standard of living. The worse the standard of living, the better chance you've got of getting the people to follow anything. I mean, it doesn't really matter. And like Matt said, the problem with Christianity is that it is so all or nothing when you take a literal interpretation, that it spreads like a virus, and then that virus is destructive. I mean, we've seen it over and over and over throughout history. So,
and that's why these missionaries go over there, because they know they can get away with it, because they're weak-minded people over there. They don't really have the high intellect like we do over here, and they get away with that shit, man. To them, it's all about spreading the fucking word, man. That's all it's about, man. They don't give two shits that a child's gonna die because they think he's a witch. It's like, come on, man. You can't be fucking kidding me here, man. And it's pretty bad that there's over 200 cases on this witchcraft with children.
Children are blank slates. These intelligent, educated Western cultures that we've got, where you have the internet and almost any fact that you want to look up at your fingertips, that you can learn whenever you want. And the most common reaction that I get from theists when I'm trying to question them about their beliefs is that, well, what else is there? And here they've got all of this information available to them that they can look up and learn all they want, and they still don't know how to go figure it out for themselves. So how can you really hold it against anyone in a less educated country that doesn't have, even China has the internet, but they don't have free access to it like we do for the most part. But in these countries in Africa and the Philippines and the Middle East, where they have no access to their own information, they only get it from their communities and whatever the dictator in power decides to give them, it's not really surprising.
No, exactly.
Absolutely.
No, I totally agree. So
and the chat log kind of took off there a little while ago. It's kind of passed, but there were a couple of people saying that it looked like I was equating education to atheism, and of course you can't make that direct correlation because there are the outliers. But what I would say is, even doing just the most basic, superficial search of societies that have more education, you're going to, and especially if you went and took a survey at MIT versus, I don't even know, I mean, I would say even, let's say Texas A&M University.
Yeah.
Had a couple of friends went there. Good university, really good school. It's actually it started off as a horticulture school and now is a really good engineering school. But I guarantee you, there's going to be more larger demographics at university or at Texas A&M than there will be at MIT. And why is it? It's due to the fact that, number one, they're out of that culture and they're not surrounded by Bubba Redneck on his tractor less than a mile away, influence these people that happen to go to Texas A&M. And I actually went to University of Texas, so I know that demographic there. So is intelligence tied to atheism? I don't think intelligence is. Do I think education is? I think that you'd be hard pressed to disprove that.
To disprove that, yeah. I was just ready to say that. It'd be hard to disprove it.
Yeah, I don't think that outliers. You're going to have outliers, but if you looked at the bell curve and what's contained in that, the vast majority would be inside the non-belief versus the belief. Sorry about that, Matt. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that we have to be careful how we are handling this particular issue. It's very important, the education and atheism idea, because you've still got some extremely intelligent and knowledgeable people who still can't shake a belief in God. John Lennox comes to mind. I consider him the most respectable of the Christian apologists, although that's not exactly saying much. But you've got all these people who are tremendously well educated and yet still are living proof that belief in a deity has less to do with the evidence or the education as it does an emotional need to have something to believe in.
No, that's great to bring on top of that. You're right. There's a lot of people that are definitely intelligent that are religious people. Will give you that. That's a fact, but they're far and few between when you come down to it, in my opinion.
But what Matt was saying, which I think is a very good point, is that it's not about the intelligence; it's about the emotional need behind there. And if we could understand that need, and
I think it's more of a personal issue. I don't think really. I just think it's more a personal issue with people. It's individual, the way they feel in life. I think. I don't know.
But arguably, the most intelligent human being on the planet. I'm physics, so I'm going to sway that way. But if you look at Newton was fairly devout. He also was an alchemist, so how he squared that circle, I don't know. But at the same time,
I'll go you one further. Negation. If Newton were alive today, he'd be an atheist.
See, I think so too.
I can say that because it's not so much believing that there's no God. It's that it's rejecting like Jesus Christ in the literal sense. Look at all of the scientists, especially physicists and cosmologists out there, who, if they are religious, it's a deist point of view. It's not a Christian point of view because they're smart enough to realize there's too many things wrong with the Bible and the Quran. It's not possible to believe it without having some sort of a mental disconnect. So I have to hope that Newton would be able to overcome that.
And most of these people that call it a deistic God, I mean, like, even if you go by deism, you basically cannot disprove a deistic God. I mean, like, nobody really can. When it comes to religion, yeah, you can go combat that and show the evidence we have through science, so on and so forth, and physics. We can go and show the creation story is just basically bullshit, and we could denounce or refute the Bible as much as we can, and really combat their claims and certain issues with Scripture. So go ahead. We got to start moving on here. So go ahead.
What I was going to say is that what I was running off of, Matt, was your premise that it's more of an emotional need than that emotional need will supersede the logic and reasoning behind that. And I don't know how much you've read of Newton, but being the way he was, he was very recluse, very self-contained, and some of the stuff that I've read from him, especially his personal writings, seem like he truly wants something, and that's why I made that leap that I think he was religious, and if his social environment wouldn't have changed, I think you're right that he probably would have ended up being an atheist, but based especially in his early life, well, almost all the way through his life, I think there's also a percentage there that he may have stayed at least somewhat religious, in some sect even maybe a deist, but I think that's an interesting take, because I've never gone down that road as far as seeing what the emotional aspect will do to the logical aspect, how much it will overwhelm logic and reason.
I've watched the debate between John Lennox and Christopher Hitchens, and the one between John Lennox and Richard Dawkins, and no matter how badly Lennox was correcting something that one of those two said, although I have to admit that Christopher Hitchens did a much better job in the debate than Dawkins did. But my point is that no matter how strongly he was disagreeing, it always came back to, I just can't accept the idea that there's no higher meaning. I just can't accept the idea that there's not something behind this. It just makes more sense to me. All of these, like, exactly. It just seems to me, that's like the underlying thing. I need to believe this. I need there to be reasons.
And I think you're absolutely right, and that's what I was saying, is that it seems like it's a comfort issue. That they need that comfort, they need that security so much that it overwhelms their logic. And I think that's a really strong point, man. That's real, very interesting.
It is. It definitely is. All right, so we're going to move on here, guys. We're going to take a 2-minute break here. So if you had to go to the bathroom, grab a drink, a beer, go give your husband or wife a kiss, and we'll be back in 2 minutes. The topics that we will be discussing in the second half of our new segment will be creationism in public school books in Louisiana, tricked with a strap-on, which is not what you think it is, but it's a pretty good story. An Afghan girl killed over refusal to wed. Sorry, guys, I'm really tired. I was hungover today, man. I was pretty fucked up last night. So, guys, 2-minute break. We'll be right back, and here we go.
Save yourself.
All right, going live. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Skeptic Fence Show. You guys back?
Yep, we're here.
Good. So let's get on to our next topic. We got 2 topics. Maybe we might fit in a third topic. We're about 10 minutes behind, but we could run the show over by 10 minutes if we have to. This topic is creationism in public school books in Louisiana. So let's get to this topic. This is our juicy topic of the week, so this is very important.
Schools in Louisiana are teaching to their school children at public schools creationism side by side next to evolution. So we have some screenshots of actual textbooks from Louisiana, so let's go to this. Now, look at this. They're talking about dating fossils. It says, most evolutionists do not believe that there was one great flood, and they capitalize flood, as in the flood right before Noah's Ark. So they look for other ways to explain how fossils were formed. Evolutionists think that the different layers of rock contain fossils from different periods of time. They believe a fossil is as old as a rock layer that is buried in it. The farther down in the rock layer that a fossil is found, the older it is. So it goes on.
The problem with this is the way they're framing it. They're saying most evolutionists think. They think this, they think that, they think... No, they've proven this. You can date, you can do carbon dating. This isn't, again, this is called science.
They don't believe in that stuff, Jimmy.
So science isn't, so that's what I always, when people go, oh, do you believe in evolution? The question should be framed, do you accept the scientific fact of evolution? That's how they should state that question, correct? Because it's an accepted scientific fact. It's not, you don't get to believe in it like it's a rumor you heard at a party.
It's a scientific theory. Now, they think that, well, the word theory has a very different meaning in the scientific realm versus a colloquial, you know, my theory is that the Lakers are the best team ever. See, that's not a scientific theory. A scientific theory is basically, well, there are no facts in science, because in science, everything's a theory. Well, it's a theory if it's as close to a fact as possible.
But what we should be teaching in schools is science.
Correct.
And evolution, the theory of evolution is science, right? So all the smarter, so people go, well, so when someone tries to argue evolution with me, they'll go, but what about this on create? I go, I don't argue evolution, and the reason why is because people who are smarter than me, evolutionary scientists, have already debated this, and they've all agreed.
There's nothing to argue. I mean, it's like the stupidest argument ever, because I mean, at a microscopic level, you can visually see how organisms evolve.
You can see evolution.
You can see it. It happens generation by generation. We can't see it in humans because it takes a long time to see the impact. You know,
but we see it happening with antibiotics and viruses right now.
Yes, we see it all the time. And you know, this idea that evolutionists don't say we came from monkeys. Nobody says that. Okay, it's the stupidest thing ever, because that's what creationists always say. We didn't come from no monkeys. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. I mean, you know, the theory of evolution is that today's apes and human beings have a common ancestor. Before humans in today's form, there were other humans in less developed form. For example, cavemen, Neanderthals, the Cro-Magnon men. So you go back in time, and there is a common link between us and the apes of today. No one thinks that we came from chimpanzees. Nobody thinks that. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding of evolution. And the other thing is that evolutionary theory is that there are these mutations, random mutations, most of which are detrimental, but if they favor the organism that has this mutation, then that organism does better than its competing rivals. So that mutation then lives on, is passed on to future generations, and that's how we evolve from a simpler organism to a more complex one. So they don't understand it. But let's go back to this graphic. Now look at this. This is in a public textbook. Look at all this word about, all this language about God.
It's not
man makes judgments about the evidence of fossils based on his beliefs.
No, they don't.
A man who believes God's record of creation and history will look at fossils in one way.
No.
A man who believes in evolution will view fossils in a different way. Now this is their attempt.
No.
This is their attempt to be fair and balanced, because they're going to have the creationist viewpoint next to the evolutionist viewpoint, and they say God created the heavens and the earth. Earth and space are a result of sudden explosion. So this is their attempt to be fair and balanced, like Fox News, but they're clowns because, I mean, like I said, let's bring back Steve O's magical invisible unicorn theory. I mean, I could put that next to that too.
Right. And say people who believe in magical unicorn theories look at fossils this way.
Yes.
Right? That's exactly what they're doing. Right? They don't say, but the people who look at the fossils in a scientific way are using science that is replicated, that can't be, that hasn't been disproven, that all this stuff that all the scientists agree. They don't give you any of that. They just make it look like, these are pretty good. And they make it sound like if you believe in God, you believe in creationism. And if you don't believe in God, you can't believe in evolution because that would be against God.
You know, I mean,
that's what they're framing it.
There is a certain level of intellectual laziness with creationism, because rather than going through the steps of how evolution actually works, it's magical thinking. This great, benevolent, all-powerful being just made everything. Boom, you're done. And you can explain to a 5-year-old very simply in one sentence. Whereas evolution is very complicated, and you have to go through all the different steps. It takes pages and pages to explain how it really works properly. So that's the problem here, and that really.
This is gross. This is like this is gross. This is like teaching Dungeons and Dragons in school and going, it's real. It's real.
Fucking amazing, man. I make these fucking people, they still don't learn from Kitsmiller versus Dover, which I'm going to bring up. Basically, that was a huge staple in keeping creationism out of schools. Of course, we all know this. There's no scientific evidence, not one piece of scientific evidence that would prove creationism, no peer review articles, so on and so forth, that would prove their ideology when it comes to creationism. Now, there's not one piece of evidence also when it comes to evolution that would contradict evolution. We know this. There's no peer review articles, there's no scientific studies out there that would actually denounce or refute evolution. Now you got to remember, their main argument when it comes to creationism is irreducible complexity. I mean, like they basically said that things are just too complex, like the bacteria flagella. It's too complex to come from a lesser life form, okay, or to be mutated into the bacteria flagella. Now, the thing about this is that scientists in Kitsmiller versus Dover actually debunked this theory. It wasn't even a theory, it was just a hypothesis. They basically shown that there was lesser forms of bacteria out there that had the same composition as the bacteria flagella. So that basically, and you got to remember, the lawyer or the judge in this case, he was a devout Christian, he was a Republican, and he was a conservative. So you got to remember, and he voted for Kitsmiller. So that's basically what happens. That's why we have this, and that's why it's a great staple in the fight against creationism being taught in schools. Now I'm sure it's going to go through the courts, and it's going to be decided where they're not going to be able to teach us. Okay, we know this. It's not going to be. It's not going to happen. So I mean, like, that's all basically I really got to say on this. Negation, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. This really strikes me. It is one of my biggest pet peeves on the planet.
Yep. That's why I said it's a big topic.
You look at this was specifically addressed before the Kitsmiller Dover in 2005 with Edwards versus Aguilar in Louisiana in '87, and the Supreme Court upheld. No, you can't teach it. It's not science. Is basically what they were saying. Now the problem is that I love the Young Turks. I think they do a great job, but in this case, I really think they dropped the ball.
They dropped the ball. Definitely they did.
Well,
I agree.
The problem is at the very first of that at that clip when they were reading from the text, it was saying that they find evidence that supports their theory. Now the problem is when you phrase it that way, it gives the student that doesn't understand what the scientific method is, how science works, it gives them the impression that the way scientists do science is exactly the way that creationists do science. Yeah. Because the way the verbiage is there, and it's very subtle, and you really got to listen to it, but I'm very keen to this now because it really pisses me off. The way that the difference between the way science finds information and the way theology finds information is theology starts by knowing what the answer is. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go out and they're going to find any evidence that will support what they already know. And anything that doesn't support it, they're either going to do like William Lane Craig and say that, well, we haven't found enough evidence to show that it really is God, or they will just completely ignore it out of hand. Whereas scientists don't start by saying we know things. What scientists do is say that we're going to look and see what the facts tell us, and based on those, we will come up with a theory that fits those facts. Now, it may seem like I'm splitting hairs here, but to understand the fundamental difference between those two types of methodologies is exactly what they're trying to suppress here. They're trying to get these kids to equate the scientific method with the same thing that theology does when it's trying to find its, let's say, evidence, and I'm using that very, very loosely, to support its, I'm not even going to call them theories because they're not. They're horseshit fairy tales. So that's my big problem with the Young Turks there. As far as what's going on in Louisiana, do you notice that the state, by most, maybe not most, but, well, most, I'll go that far, most of the educational indexes that are out there is, if not the worst state in the union, it's damn close. Them and Mississippi, right next door, run neck and neck all the time for number 50 in education every year. Now, do you think it's kind of interesting that the Creation Institute, which is out of Washington State, has decided not to try to pursue this in Washington State, but to go all the way to Louisiana for it? And if you look at the bill, it was co-authored by the Creation Institute up there. Wow. Why would they go all the way down there?
Exactly.
Because they understand that there's enough uneducated people down there that still believe that they'll get it passed. If they tried to do it in Washington State, they'd get laughed out of the room. This wouldn't get past day one. That's all I've got. Matt, go ahead.
Real quick before you go on, Matt. Guys, if you want to call into the show, our call-in segment, live call-in segment, will be coming up shortly after our... I see you, Christopher. Hitch slap.
See slap.
Yeah, guys, if you want to call in, the Skype contact is above in the title bar up top. Please, you need to write in your contact request the gist you wish to discuss with the panel. Any questions, any comments, any statements. If you're going to battle with me and say, well, it's up to me to decide, no, it's not up for you to decide. You need to let me know what you want to discuss. I just don't bring anybody on without knowing what you want to discuss. I will delete the Skype contact, okay? So I want to make that clear. Go ahead, Texas. Or Matt.
I have just one very, very fast thing to say so we can move the show forward. If you're ever talking to someone who says that creationism is true and evolution is false, I can't talk. Evolution is false. The first thing you should do is get them to actually define evolution. If they're a creationist saying that it's false, they should be able to tell you what it is that's false.
Yeah,
if they can't get past that, there's no point in talking to them. That's all I wanted to say.
I totally agree with you, and I'm always, like me and Negation always say that, well, you got to define God, you got to define evolution, you got to define creationism, you got to just define things. Because they'll go on a different tangent on what they think evolution is. So, yeah, they got to define it first to see what they think. So, and then you can combat them and go into any kind of rebuttal and just basically show them that they're fucking wrong. That's all I got. So, Negation, anything else?
Yeah. Thing real quick. Guys, for the people calling in, it's not that we're trying to screen the calls and keep legitimate questions out from theists or from anybody else.
Yeah, just let us know what you want to discuss. We'll bring it on. That's all. See here. It's going to be tricked with a strap-on. So let's get to this topic. This might be our last topic. So if we don't have any people calling in, we could just go to our other topics that we discussed, Negation. So let's get to this video. Guys, my computer's like really laggy today. I got latency problems. I don't know why. I should have restarted before the show, but it's going to be a little laggy tonight, so I apologize. Let's get to it.
Christian therapist Leslie Pilkington's career may be over because she tried to help a homosexual man. The incident happened in 2009.
I was approached by a young man who said that his name was Matthew Stins, actually, and that he was gay, he was very unhappy, and he was depressed. And would I be able to help him?
But his real name was not Matthew Stins. It was Patrick Strudwick, and he was lying about why he had come to her.
And to be quite honest, I totally believed everything that he said. I had no reason to suspect anything else.
What she didn't know was that he was an undercover journalist, and he had a tape recorder strapped to his body.
Then the counseling sessions ended, and Leslie's professional nightmare began.
And he then telephoned me to say that, in fact, he was not at all who he said he was. He was happy in his gay lifestyle, and that his purpose was to expose me and people like me.
Strudwick heads a group called the Stop Conversion Therapy Task Force, which opposes psychological conversion therapy to help gays become straight. And he wrote about his experience with Leslie in 2 of Britain's biggest papers. Pilkington now faces disciplinary proceedings by the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy. Among her transgressions, praying to God to heal Strudwick of his homosexuality, and having an agenda that homosexuality is wrong. She could lose her accreditation. Andrea Williams heads the Christian Legal Center, which is helping Pilkington.
If you believe that a homosexual can change their behaviour, you will lose your job. You will be disabused of your position. You will lose your professional accreditation.
The gay agenda is one of the most potent political movements in the United Kingdom, even though according to a poll there are not very many homosexuals in Britain. Only 1.5% of the population. That's 750,000 homosexuals in a nation of 60 million people.
There's been an incredible shift in our nation, both in our media and particularly in our law, that treats the whole homosexual issue, the whole gay agenda, as something that's absolutely equivalent to race.
Leslie's attorney Paul Diamond says it's part of a broad agenda to overturn all traditional values on sexuality.
They call it human rights. And they use these grand terms like tolerance and diversity. There's a hard-nosed political agenda of which an objective appears to be to remove Judeo-Christian morality from the public realm.
The British government has approved a plan to insert homosexual themes throughout school curricula, even math, to help children view homosexuality as normal. Meanwhile, the British High Court has ruled in a landmark case that Christian beliefs on sexual ethics may be harmful to children.
It was argued the state has a duty to protect vulnerable children. The government in Britain argued this from being infected with such ideas being Judeo-Christian views on sexual morality.
One of the riskier things to say in Britain today, especially if you're a therapist, is that homosexuals are not born that way, or that homosexuals can become heterosexual. After Strudwick's undercover investigation, the British Medical Association decided to brand gay conversion therapy as harmful. Strudwick told CBN News that gay people in Britain are, as they are everywhere, at risk of hate, intolerance, and persecution. He said there is no empirical evidence conversion therapy works, and there is plenty of evidence that conversion therapy does damage. He added that love needs no cure. Diamond and Pilkington say conversion therapy works.
People do change after treatment. There's no evidence of any harm. That is actually the evidence.
And as Christians, it's to be encouraged to hear that science is backing up the Word of God, and that you are not born that way.
Pilkington, who has a son who is gay, waits to see if she will be banned from ever counseling again. She believes God is taking her through this experience and using it in people's lives.
I also feel that the Lord's giving me an opportunity in that to try and speak to those who are in a homosexual lifestyle but who are unhappy. And I believe the message is that you're not born that way. You don't have to stay in that lifestyle. There's hope. And that's a really important message for today, that there's hope.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, London.
Well, there you got it.
Christian therapist Leslie
I'm like, there you go. I'm just so sick of this conversion therapy bullshit. I mean, like, seriously. I'm like, you guys know how I feel with this, and I'll say it again. I'm like, you are born gay. I mean, like, if you have a choice to be gay, do people have a choice to be heterosexual? I mean, like, that's, you ask anybody, that's it. Okay, well, you think it's a choice. Well, did you make your choice be a heterosexual, or did you have these feelings? Did you make a choice? Did you say, okay, today I'm going to be a heterosexual, or today I'm going to be a gay person? Did these people make their choice be heterosexual? No, of course not, okay? Of course it is. People are born gay, okay? Hopefully, I don't know if they have, but I'm sure they're on some kind of research right now that hopefully within the DNA or the genome that they will be able to discover a gay gene. I think that will come, and that's going to be detrimental to these people that actually believe in conversion therapy. What conversion therapy does, in my own viewpoint, is this, is that it damages the person even more. They suppress their gay thoughts, and that's why a lot of these people that are gay, that are Christian, that go to these deconversion or conversion therapies, what happens to them is they have suicidal thoughts. They're psychologically messed up for the rest of their lives. They suppress their gay feelings because of people telling them that it's bad, that you're an abomination in God's eyes. This has to stop. And I'm so happy that California recently banned it in their state, which is a great progression or a progressive movement going on to ban this for kids underneath the age of 18 in California. I think it's a huge feat.
I have just a couple of quick things to add. When I was in high school, I knew a lot of gay kids. Even though I went to a very small school in a small town, I went to high school in southern Arkansas, in a town that had 7,000 people. And I think I had, like, in my grade and the one above me and the one behind me, I think I had like 6 gay classmates. And one of them ended up being sent by his parents to California for conversion therapy. And it was incredibly damaging. And I just would just like to say that I have to wonder just how effective of a therapist this lady is. If she sat through a session with this guy, Patrick Strudwick, or whatever his name was, and wasn't able to tell that he was lying to her about everything he was saying. I mean, how good of a therapist are you if you just let someone lie to you and obviously have an agenda for the entire session, or it could have been multiple sessions, and never pick up the fact that he was lying to you? So
yeah, it is, you're right, and it's just pretty amazing, man, the shit we gotta deal with. Negation.
I'll be real quick. I mean, the thing that I think is interesting, number one, guys, if you noticed where that came from, that was a Christian broadcast network. That's what CBN stands for. And if you notice, again, the subtle little things they throw in there, they didn't interview anyone who was gay or anyone that went through the conversion therapy. They also made sure you understood it's only 1.3% or whatever the hell it was. Really? So now we're going to define human rights by, I don't know, the majority? Yeah, I mean, just because, I mean, if there's one person being persecuted, I don't give a shit what that percentage is. I think as a human society, we should strive to make everybody have the same rights.
That's right. Equality, man.
Exactly. And they twisted it. They tried to make it look as though the poor lady was trying to help, and because she said she prayed, they're persecuting her. No. They're persecuting her because she's causing harm to these people that walk into their office, and like Live Life was saying, ends up committing suicide because they think they're so screwed up when there is nothing wrong with them.
Correct.
And yeah, the thing that shocked me at the end there, I don't know if anybody caught this, but there was a great tagline that said, "Love needs no cure." That ought to be a bumper sticker. I'm telling you that, I can't believe they even published that, because that to me says it all.
It does says it all. It's just a quick saying. It just gets right to the point, man. It's beautifully said, you know. But I hope this lady does lose her accreditation. I really do. I hope she really does, which she probably will. But it's just bullshit, man. It's just, seriously. I hope all the other states in the United States, at least here, because whatever we do over here, usually the other countries usually follow suit, and you know, take into consideration what we do over here. So I just hope every state in the United States has this, where conversion therapy is at least under a certain age for now. See how it works, and then I think it should be banned. Period. Conversion therapy when it comes to gays, but you know, we'll see what happens. You know. Alright everybody, welcome back to the Skeptic Fence Show. This segment is for our guest, the TexanCanadian. He's our Skeptic of the Week. Matt, welcome again, of course, and this segment's all about you. And we're going to play your video in here in a second. So let's get to that. I'm going to play a snippet of his video, guys. If you want to watch the rest of his video, I'll give you the link. This is his YouTube link. Make sure you please go subscribe to him right now if you want to, as you're listening to his video. I'm going to play about 2 or 3 minutes of this video because it's really good, and people should go over there after the show and watch the rest of it because I'm only going to play like 2 or 3 minutes here. So let's get to it.
Hello out there, you infidels. Many of you feel compelled, as I do, to try to correct a theist's misapprehensions, whether that theist is a family member or only a stranger you meet on the internet. Those who have abandoned religion, or at least fundamentalist interpretations of it, are becoming more and more of a social and political force in Western cultures. Conversely, those theists who consider this a frontal assault on their belief systems are fighting back in every way they can, as the recent election in the U.S. demonstrates. I am in no way claiming that the following will work in every discussion, nor am I claiming that all theists are either rational or irrational. If you're just looking for ways to get through to them, and help them abandon religion as you have already been able to do, this video is for you.
You need to believe without evidence, and you need to worship and adhere and follow my commands. That's not love. That is not love. That is not an exercise of love. That is not a...
I mean, he went through
hell. He didn't die. Do you not...
He was the one that paid the price.
Denise. Denise.
Him, you know,
Denise.
That's their decision.
Right. Then why the fuck did you call?
Excuse me?
I just...
You can't be a lot more civil to someone that calls in without using filthy language?
Filthy language? Well, hang on. First of all, you called to tell us...
This conversation is over. God bless you. I hope all of you see the light. He is the only way. Goodbye.
Are you done? Oh.
Yeah, she's hanging up.
Do your very best to keep calm and patient. This doesn't mean you can't be honest or critical, but far too many theists use an atheist behavior as an excuse to deflect the argument.
Swing your daughter by the hand, but if she gets raped...
I'm telling you, man, this is like all like messed up, man, with this crap. I got some latency problems, man. So there you guys go subscribe to them now, guys. Here's the link. And the TexanCanadian, Matt, how you doing, man? Welcome. You
doing excellent.
Oh, good, man. I got some questions for you. Of course, I think Negation might have forwarded them to you already, but let's get to it, man. I usually have these common questions I ask the YouTubers. I ask everybody these questions because I think if I ask these questions, it'll give maybe some people inspiration to start doing their own channel and becoming an activist online. So that's the reason why I ask these 3 questions. So they're pretty simple questions. So the name looks a little easy to figure out, but why the name? Why the name The TexanCanadian?
Honestly, because there's not too many, in my experience. I've lived in Canada for 9 years now. I was born in Texas and eventually moved as I was growing up. Army brat and ended up just moving something like 25 times by the time I was ready to graduate from high school. But I haven't really met any Americans in Canada. So I figured there can't be too many Texans in Canada, and I didn't think I would have any trouble getting the name. When you register, it's very frustrating to have wherever you're registering to tell you that the name is taken. So I just had a pretty good bet that one was not taken. And honestly, at the time, I was not planning on making videos. So, I should come up with something a little more clever, but it's at least unique. So that's basically the whole story behind it.
Sometimes I should say. But another question I have is, how long you been doing videos? I think I know said that at the beginning of the show, but how long you been doing videos, and why did you decide to start a YouTube channel and start creating videos?
I actually made, I think, 4 or 5 videos early last year, or the year before, I forget which, and ended up closing my account, I guess just because I didn't feel like I was actually accomplishing anything. They were all kind of vlog videos, and it didn't feel right. And then I started watching Qualia Soup and Phil Helene's and a few others, that they seemed like they had so much to say and so many profound things that they were able to do, that I felt like that's something that I wanted to do. That's about it. The more that I talk to theists of any religion, the less I realized that they had to back up what they were saying. And after a while, when you grow up with it in a small town in the South, you're just beat up with it every day over the head. When I was working my first job at a grocery store, I would almost daily have these middle-aged housewives coming and harassing me to come to their churches, and that's not something that goes away. So I'm just fighting back a little bit against the sort of like mindless repetition of religion, I guess.
Great answer, yeah. I see exactly where you're coming from. Videos, that's what it's all about. Your videos, I watched about 4 or 5 of them today, and they're very well done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My last question is, what do you hope to achieve from the videos that you create on YouTube?
I made a survey about, I guess, 2 months ago for people who don't believe in a God, and that was the last question on the survey. What's the point? Why do this? Why argue on the internet with people about religion? And I think that a lot of the reasons why I do it, we've already talked about in this show. That there's just such a disinformation campaign going on. Here we are in this advanced culture. I'm not just going to say the United States, but I consider Western culture, all of the European countries almost, and Canada and the U.S. We're so advanced with technology and knowledge, and we still have these people who just can't let go of the ignorant things that they believe and have no interest in letting them go. So that's really what I want to get rid of. And there has to be a way to get through to the people who are able to be gotten through to, and what better way is there with the internet? I mean, being able to communicate with anyone, anywhere. So when you're just a normal citizen that doesn't have like a following, like you don't have your own TV show, you're not a famous novelist, you just have to communicate and have to get what you want to say out there however you can.
No, I totally agree.
But Matt, brother from Texas, I know I've got some, let's say, interesting stories from when I was growing up, and I was fortunate enough to grow up in a fairly big city. Knowing that you kind of came from a small town, you got anything that you think would be interesting to tell us about?
What I have, the stories that I have aren't so much due to religion, although obviously religion is a background cause. But what bothered me more growing up in a small town in Arkansas, which was at the time about 45 minutes south of the city in the United States with the highest crime rate, which was Pine Bluff, Arkansas at the time. And I lived 45 minutes south of there, and I grew up, I remember at 8 years old, having my barber, as I'm sitting in his chair and he's cutting my hair, talking to me about those evil niggers. And it's always bothered me as an adult to look back and think that here I am, this 8-year-old kid, and I've got this crazy cracker asshole barber cutting my hair, and I didn't know any different. I just thought, wow, I don't really feel comfortable with that at 8 years old. That's all I could really think. But, I mean, it all comes back to some sort of religious cause, or at least the ignorance that leads to creationism, I think, is tied very closely to the ignorance that leads to racism. And I remember growing up a little more and being in middle school and high school and being in class and hearing other kids talking about black people in the class and racial fights starting. And since I've moved to Canada, you don't see that. And it's on one hand, it has to do with more people having to live together in larger communities. You have to try to live together more. When you're in a small community, there's a lot more of a tribalistic kind of, you're part of the group or you're not part of the group. And because I moved around so much, I never really got included in that. So I always identified more with people who didn't belong than people who did belong. And that, I think, goes for religious culture as well as any community that's inclusive and doesn't want to make you apart because of some way that makes you different. So I think that's why a lot of people are closet atheists as well, is because they don't want to be marginalized in their community. Belonging and seeming like you're part of the group is what leads a lot of people to never abandon religion publicly. They just want to go with the flow. And some people just refuse to do that, and I'm one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree on that aspect, is because that in the United States with the Pew and Gal polls out there recently that came out this year, is like you see what you just stated there being true, is like being closet atheists, but they'll come out as being non-religious in these polls. They won't say they're an atheist. So I mean, like, even though it is confidential when they do these polls, but I just think people just realize that well, I don't want to call myself an atheist. I'll just call myself a non-religious. That, as in, I don't go to church every day. I don't believe in any kind of religion or any kind of sect of Christianity or any religion in general, I should say. And I think that's what people are afraid of. They're afraid to come out and say religion is bullshit in America. And I see where you're coming from, and I agree with you 100% there. Negation?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That was a great answer, and I think that people that don't live in the South and haven't come from that upbringing don't understand that there is a correlation between the two. It seems like, at least in my experience, that the more religious, the more bigoted, which was just, you would think it should be opposite to that end, but it's not. It seems like that, number one, I'm better than everybody because I'm religious, and I'm damn sure better than anybody that's got a little bit more pigmentation in their skin. It's amazing. But yeah, great answer, man. Next one. You know, pretty apparent you moved. And I've said, I don't know how many times on the show that, you know, if it gets bad enough here, me and my wife are hauling ass as well. What influenced your move up there? What determined you going up there?
Well, you know, I moved in 2003, at the end of 2003. So politically, I would like to say that I moved because of
war.
The war. I would honestly, I'd like to be able to lie and say that that's why I moved, but it's not. I met my wife on the internet, and that's why I moved here. But looking back, I've never, honestly, aside from family, I've never had any desire to go back. And that's a sad thing to say about your own country, but with what's happened, I haven't had any motivation, aside from family that I miss, to go back to the U.S. You know,
yeah.
It's a fishbowl. Living in the United States is what I always say, it's a fishbowl. When you live there, you don't really think outside of the United States. Mm-hmm. And then when you leave, you're like, wow, things are so much different when you take a different perspective. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so I moved for personal reasons, not for political reasons. But I would recommend, if anyone is having a hard time adjusting to what's going on politically, with religion, with anything in the U.S., Canada is, it's a good place to go if you just have to get out. So just do whatever's right for you. For that goes for anyone, but you know, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad choice to make. I would say that it's actually a good place to live.
Wow. Yeah,
you socialist bastard.
That's exactly that's what I was about to say. I was going to say, you know, if you don't mind, expand a little bit on that and tell us, since you've had the experience. I think through our conversations, I figured out that you were early 20s or mid 20s when you left. So you've got a pretty good. You can speak to both sides.
Yeah.
Tell us, you know, what's the difference? What are you seeing up there versus down here?
I could write a book about that, but I'll keep it very short. The two biggest differences are healthcare and that nobody has guns up here. People sometimes have rifles, and we did have there was an election a few months ago, and someone didn't like how it turned out, and this wacko showed up at the speech, the acceptance speech after the election, where the official was giving her speech, and he just started shooting people. That's very rare up here. In Montreal, where I live, there's something like 3.8 million people, and there's something like 25 murders every year. And you go to any city in the U.S. with half that many people, and it's that much every week. And that to me, it's mind-boggling to think back how much more afraid it felt walking down the street in the U.S. than you do here. I don't have fear of anyone walking down the street anymore. That's not just a gun issue, that's a safety issue. You don't feel like anyone wants to take anything from you. And that translates to, the whole feminist issue that's going along with, like, women are looking at every man like a potential rapist, and that's, a business. You're always thinking that the other guy's trying to fuck you for something, you just don't feel that up here. You don't sense that up here. And the other thing is the healthcare. I can't even describe how nice it is to not have to worry about if you have a life-threatening illness or something. You don't have to worry about it. If you get sick, you don't have to worry because it's already paid for. There's no value that you can put on that taking the stress off and feeling that much more comfortable. And if you get sick, you go on the first day, the second day. You don't wait until you're so sick you can't even drag yourself out of bed.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And with that, people are much more comfortable. They have a higher quality of life. So that's the way I look at it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one of my driving factors that keeps it literally at the forefront of when I or my wife get any job offers, is that if based on our education, what we do, all of that, we should be fine. The problem is, like you were saying, if one of us gets cancer, one of us has a heart attack, and we do hit that ceiling on our health care, even though we've got great health care, just like at least hundreds, if not thousands of other Americans, we're going to be, that year, that month, whatever, we're going to be bankrupt. And now my kids have to suffer because of where I chose to live. And that's my biggest driving factor, is the fear that something's going to happen and we're going to bankrupt because of how selfish this society is.
Mm-hmm.
There's another great aspect of living in Canada, aside from the fact that people basically leave religion alone. There's historical reasons for that I won't go into, but people just basically don't care. But the first summer that I moved here, and that would have been 2004, I remember walking down the street past a tanning salon, and there was a poster advertising the tanning salon, and a woman who was naked from the waist up on a poster on the street. She had on like the little eye covers, and you could see that she was wearing a thong, laying in a tanning bed, but you could see breasts on the poster on the street. I remember how much that blew my mind, that you could see any sort of nudity in public.
Wow.
Nobody cared. People just walk right past. It's not a big deal. Maybe that's the French influence, but my point is that nobody cared. You've got all of these religious right nut jobs screaming about the sexual degeneration of Western society, and here you've got nudity on a poster for any one child, elderly person to see, and it makes no difference to anyone whatsoever. It really changes your perspective.
It does, yeah. I totally exactly see what you're saying, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, that's about all I had. Did you want to go to the chat questions, or did you want to do the call-ins first?
Do you got chat questions?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Matt, TCTA Killa 187. What he wants to know is, and again, let me know if I'm butchering this, Killa. He's basically saying that he's put off by the militant atheist in the U.S. attacking anything religious. Mm-hmm. And he just wanted to know your opinion on that. Should we be as an anti-theist, I think would be a more accurate term than just an atheist, which I'll definitely claim that, that title. How do you feel about attacking everything Christian, or not Christian, religious in general?
That's a really good question. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple to answer, but it's a very important question. Because Christianity is so intertwined in American culture, there was a video, I don't know if anyone here saw it, but Cody Weber, the photographer for The Amazing Atheist, put out a video recently called Atheists Are Assholes. And he was talking about how he used to be an atheist asshole. He's still an atheist, but he used to be more of an asshole. And then his grandmother got sick and she died. And he came to realize as she was dying that here she was holding on to her faith and needing it to be able to make it through the experience. So, and then he was saying that it's less important that you correct someone else on religion than it is for them to be comfortable, basically. That's not what he said, but I'm paraphrasing. But I think it's more important to keep in mind what's true than it is to be comfortable. But if someone is in such dire straits that they need religion to be able to make it through a situation, one of the biggest problems with the atheism debate is that a lot of Christians don't see how you can have morality without God. But most atheists are humanists, so you already have the empathy, you have the understanding of someone else's problems and what they're going through most of the time. Some people just don't care, and those people are assholes, whether they're theists or atheists. Makes no difference.
Absolutely. Yep.
But that being said, if you are smart enough to have figured out that morality does not come from a God or from being commanded to have morality, and you don't think that you're going to be a psycho killer just because there's no God anymore, you've also been smart enough to figure out that it's in your best interest to at least let people try to be happy and peaceful and live their lives, whether it's your family or anyone else. So you should use your own judgment, and by all means attack religion. Don't attack someone for believing in religion.
That's exactly
correct,
it.
and that's what negation is. I say it all the time on the show. Any show I do, it's I attack the religion. I don't attack the person. It's because they were either weak in their life or they were indoctrinated as a kid. Because kids, you know, they have blank slates as kids, and you could tell them whatever the fuck they should believe, and that's basically what it boils down to. And then on your point, real quick, I want to go on is that I just think that on the morality issue, when they say atheists don't have morality, and I've said this a lot of times too, and I want to make sure it gets out there, is like we evolved our morality over, say, 50,000 years or even 100,000 years. We evolved our morality in different societies. If we didn't have a certain conscience or a certain morality to live by as we were primates or whatever you want to say, we would never survived. Okay, we would never survived. So our morality evolved, especially before any monotheistic or even polytheistic religion came into play. They just basically raped morality, you know, through our conscience. We know the difference between right and wrong. There's been studies out there with kids where they know the difference between right and wrong when religion doesn't apply. And there's a lot of studies out there. Anybody could research it. It's peer review articles you could check out. It's pretty much common sense. It's just when they teach the biblical morality to children, it's so detrimental to them. It does more harm than good. So that's all I gotta say. Negation.
Yeah. This one's kind of a funny question. The only other question, well, I just got another one, but I'll go ahead and throw you this one.
Yeah, we'll do like two quick ones, and then we'll go into our live call-in session. I got like 2 people lined up. So go ahead.
Okay, let me, because this other one's kind of, this one's better. Dirtmaster 5000. He wanted to know your reaction to Silverman. And
Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, did you see that on O'Reilly? I should have asked you that first.
I did. Yeah, I did. And I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of Dave Silverman, just because I understand that it's important, politically speaking, for us to get ourselves out there and for everyone to see us and recognize us as a political force, because we are a group that other people see. Even if we don't feel like we're a group, we still have sort of a community, as it were, as a demographic. And that's basically where, you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's all atheism is. But people like Dave Silverman are more concerned with getting people's attention and focus on recognizing atheism as part of society. Mm-hmm. And guys like the Amazing Atheist and people who are confrontational and can be assholes and can be rude and controversial, that has its place as well in getting attention and getting people to talk about the issues. But on a personal level, I don't like Dave Silverman's approach to religion. I do think it's a good idea to get it out there and get it in people's faces. If they're telling you that God exists and not backing it up, you need to take them to task. But as far as just being, I'm not going to say abusive, but he goes over the top a little bit. And I did see this video that you're talking about with him and Bill O'Reilly, and I thought it was very interesting. The thing that stuck out to me the most was the whole Christianity is a philosophy, it's not a religion.
Yeah. And how many times Bill O'Reilly?
That's no problem. If it's a philosophy, not a religion, I'm completely okay with that.
Take
now
the
we can
tax
start
exempt
taxing
away.
churches.
Exactly. Take their tax
Yeah,
exempt
exactly.
status away.
But if you noticed, O'Reilly backed that up really quickly by saying that the denomination of Christianity was a religion. So that's his get out of jail free. No, the other thing that I was getting to is that Christianity being a federal holiday, is it? And in fact, Matt, if you got anything to say on that, I'll let you go first because I'll rant forever.
I don't really have anything to say about the whole war on Christmas thing. I think it's just a big red herring. It's just a way to cause controversy where there isn't any, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and the reason why, let me butt in here real quick if you don't if you don't mind, but the reason why I do my playlist I've been creating, I already create 3 videos on the war on Christmas, is to show the insanity Fox News has towards it. Now, do I celebrate Christmas? Do I say Merry Christmas to people? Yes, absolutely. My parents, Merry Christmas. We celebrate Christmas, but it's in a secular way. It's not a religious way. My mom goes to church by herself. My dad doesn't go. We exchange presents. We have a cup of coffee in the morning before we do our gift exchanges. I like watching a tree. I like watching the fireplace go. Yeah, I'll say Merry Christmas, this and that. I don't think there's really, David Silverman, he combats the word Christmas. That's what his agenda is. I don't see it that way. I just feel that Christmas has become so secularized in the United States that majority of people, when they say 90% of people celebrate Christmas, I don't think it's not in a religious text. There's I would say it's a minority of people that would say that would be due to religious views or the birth of Jesus. And then we can go into the history of Jesus and all that if we want to, but I already made a video about that. Everybody knows that video, so I'm not going to go over it. Go ahead.
I think that the biggest problem right now with the religious right is that they see that the rest of society in the United States is progressing.
Correct.
They're progressing, and they are freaking out about it.
Correct.
And they're trying everything they can to stop the progression, because the natural progression in Western cultures is to move away from bad methods.
And they're going to be even more extreme.
Bad method.
And they're going to be more extreme in their viewpoints in the next 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah,
and you think they're going to back down?
Harder and harder until they're marginalized and they are, Timothy McVeigh's. That's all that there's going to be left. There's going to be people complaining by themselves, and then there's going to be people blowing up other people because they can't think of any other way to fight the progress. And it's going to happen anyway, so they may as well sit back and enjoy it.
Correct. I totally agree.
Yeah, and that's what my rant was basically going to be on, is I don't think it's any more than, like what you were saying, Matt, it's just a way to get attention for Fox News, number one, to increase the ratings.
That's all it is.
And also to try to shore up as much as they possibly can these people leaving Christianity. I think that once you can turn someone from being a benign, just it is what it is, and it's kind of, it's a non-issue for most people, kind of like what it is in Europe and I'm assuming Canada, then it tends to just fade away. And if they don't light that fire every year, if they don't make it an issue, there's going to be people that just leave because, you know what, yeah, we usually go to church on Christmas, but this year let's blow it off. And I think that's part of what they're trying to accomplish. Now, of course, Fox in general doesn't give a shit about anything except ratings.
Yeah.
But I think Bill O'Reilly does have a vested interest and really does believe that, along with a lot of other people on Fox, that he does need to make this a public statement. He does need to make this something that's out there.
I don't think he believes it. I seriously don't think he truly believes this war on Christmas.
No, I don't either. I don't believe the debate between him and Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a player.
I definitely
Bill O'Reilly is a player.
I agree with that.
He's just he's making noise. That's all he's doing.
That's all he's doing.
Right. And that's my point. It's not that he believes in the work on Christmas. What I think he believes in
religion
is the more noise he makes, the more he makes this an issue, he can get a certain number of people out there to go, basically lose their minds over this and get radical and talk about it at church. And now the preachers have something to preach about from now until probably March, about how horrible it is and how we have to fight the atheist demons and all of that kind of crap. But again, I think you're absolutely right, Matt, that it's all prefaced with what is Fox trying to do. It's sensationalist journalism, and how many people can we get by saying the dumbest shit out there?
It's the same reason that Jersey Shore is popular and Honey Boo Boo Child. It's a freak show. It's a big freak show.
It's all about ratings. It's about the silliness. It's just about the immaturity, and it's just about society just being so fucked up and thinking that shows like fuck. And people watch that shit, man, just for entertainment. I believe it's just all about entertainment. I don't think people really take this fucking kid serious, Honey Boo Boo Child. I think it's just so funny. I watched some episodes and I thought it was fucking hilarious. I think it's great. It just shows you how fucked up society is in general, how fucked up people are.
I watched Honey Boo Boo, I think, one, maybe 2 episodes, if I can remember right, but I did see one of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, man, it's like watching a train wreck. It's like watching somebody's decapitated head rolling down the street. Yeah. You don't want to watch it, but it's kind of hard to flip and turn it off. Yeah. I mean, it's so damn ridiculous.
Car wreck.
Exactly.
It is.
And and that's exactly what this is all about now. I mean, and the biggest, correct me if I'm wrong on this, isn't that on the History Channel?
I don't know it. You know what? I don't even have a television.
Yes, it's on, I believe, no, it might be on the History Channel. I think you might be right on that. I'm not sure. You could be right.
Well, I'm pretty sure it's either History or Discovery or one of those, which was founded as an informational channel.
Yeah, the Learning Channel or something like that, yeah. LHC, or Learning Channel, yeah. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, it's one of those. And it's just like, are you kidding me? This is what... I don't know. But I don't want to get off on that tangent because we will be way late. So.
Yeah, we're late. We only got about maybe 20 minutes left in the show. But you want to stick around, Texan Canadian?
I'm
Matt?
good.
Right.
Yeah, it's Saturday night, and
you feel all right?
Good. Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our live call-in segment. And right now we have Wittgensteinen. Whit, I'm going to call you Whit. Whit, are you there? Nope, he just exited out, so let me call him back again. You guys there? Negation? Matt?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Hey, Whit, what's up? You there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Hey, what's up, man? What you got for us?
Okay, I just had 3 quick points about the creationist thing.
Sure.
In terms of teaching creationism in school, I'll just say quick, I come at it from a slightly different perspective, from a more of an educational perspective.
Okay.
So the quick points I'd want to make is that I actually think creationism could be used as a good pedagogical tool, that is, a good teaching tool in order to actually teach evolution and science in general, because it turns out that kids are actually really interested in this topic. Like in some of my education courses, whenever this subject was brought up about, what do we do with it, it was always one of the most lively discussions in the class. And so the idea is basically, like comparing like it'd be comparable to teaching like the like Ptolemy's system in order to kind of teach what Copernicus did, and so as a kind of contrast. And so the second point is that one of the only valid point I think that creationism kind of brings into the discussion is that science it's not this appeal to authority, but it's kind of dependent on people to test things for themselves, which is how science progresses. So people come along and disprove the old theories and replacing them with something better, because it's all about whether or not that theory can really hold up. So just as a kind of starting point, like introduced to the kids, and just the idea of like going with kids' interests it's basically been proven to be one of the most effective teaching tools, to start with the child's own interest. And I think it'd actually be a really good tool to like draw people in to teaching them about evolution, and starting off with like, well, do you have to believe in? Do you have to be an atheist to believe in evolution? You know, kind of dispelling all the myths, because it is in a sense, you'd almost be granting the creationists what they are asking for. You know, they say teach the controversy. Well, you could bring it up. This is not, none of this is to say you'd be teaching creationism. You know, you'd be using it as a tool to talk about, well, why does evolution work, and why is it actually a far superior theory, and why it works. And but the overall point, I guess, I would make is that we should really be teaching kids how to think.
Yes.
And that's what science is about. It's about the method of science. So we should teach them how to think, not what to think.
I tend to my problem here is that when you start to teach this type of epistemology, if you want to stretch it to that point, it's not science, and that's where my rub comes in. If you want to teach it, great.
I want to make sure to tell people out there before, because I'm looking at the comments, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure to people that I'm on the fence with this issue. I'm not saying one side or the other. I'm leaning more towards to say don't teach creationism in school, but I'm also on the other side of the fence a little bit, saying, well, if you're going to teach everything, that's fine. So I just want to make sure that's cleared up.
I'm not saying teach creationism either, just to be perfectly clear on my point. I'm saying as like a kind of jumping off point, just to grab students' interests, because that's been proven to be one of the most effective ways to get kids interested in even learning in the first place. So
and here's where the rub is with me, Wed. If you could make sure that when you approach this, the kids understand that we're looking at this from a purely exploratory, I want to use non-scientific because it is. And that type of methodology that we're going to use, that we preface with whatever class, and the other thing, this class needs to be fairly late in their education, I would say, at least junior, senior high school, public education end of it. So they actually have time to understand rational thought, what logic is to even a basic degree, and be able to run it through that filter. And as long as we would preface it by saying, look, here is a thought process, and what this thought process does is it mandates, because it does, and I know using that word is pretty strong, but it mandates that you start with the understanding you already know what the answer is. And what we're going to do is we're going to work backwards, and we're going to find evidence that supports not a theory, because a theory is fluid. We can change it over time. Whereas a religion, these are facts, and we're just finding things to fit those facts, which is ass backwards from science. Science never approaches a problem from that direction. And if you could teach it that way, it would be extremely useful. And I would be on board. I'd love to teach it myself, to tell you the truth. But the problem is when you walk into a public school and you say that, half the people's heads will explode when their kids come home and say, Mom, did you know that they're teaching that, this is how you're doing things, and you shouldn't be, and maybe not even that you shouldn't be doing it, because they're going to be smart enough to infer that this is a flawed methodology. And that's where I have the problem with it. I think the thought wit is a very good one, and I would love for you to, or somebody else, to figure out a way to implement, because I think you're right, it would be very valuable. The problem is I think the implementation, unless done very, very, very carefully, it could be problematic.
The curriculum, it just has to be very well orchestrated. It has to be, it's a very touchy subject, man. That's why I say I'm on the fence with it. Like, I'm leaning more towards, it's not scientifically proven that creationism is real, at least a Christian viewpoint, or any viewpoint for that matter. We know evolution is real based on evidence and facts. We know that, okay? But, like I said, me and Negation, we talked about this plenty of times. It's like, I just feel like if they're going to do it, you got to teach all viewpoints. If not, which they're going to, what basically is, if you put that on the table, saying, well, if you want to teach a Christian biblical viewpoint, then we're going to have to teach this, and that of other religions. You know what? The Christians would never go for it. So you know what? It's basically it's flawed. They would never go for that. So basically, is my probably ending statement would be like, no, don't teach creationism in school. Just teach evolution that's based on scientific fact,
And one thing I want
scientific
to be clear,
theories.
guys, me and Whit, we get along well. I mean, the discussions we have, when I say lock horns, we're just discussing and we're playing. I really like talking to him, so anybody in the chat, don't think that I dislike talking.
Well, can I make...
Yeah, go ahead, Texan. Matt, you got anything to say?
I do actually. Yeah.
Okay, good.
My problem is that even if you did get it pushed through, even if you did get to the point where it was a program that creationism was taught in school along with evolution, it wouldn't matter, because the problem areas in the U.S. where they are either not teaching evolution correctly or not at all, or already saying creationism is true, but we're mandated to teach you evolution just because it's a law. These are the problem areas where if you did tell the teachers in those areas, okay, you can teach creationism, go ahead, but you also have to teach evolution, the problem is going to be that they can't make sense of it in their minds enough to accept that evolution is true anyway.
It's going to be your own subjective
They're
viewpoint.
going to screw it up no matter what.
Yeah, it's going to be subjective. Yeah.
You have to first get people to understand that evolution is true based on the evidence before you can even get to the point where you can teach competing theories. Because if people can't even do that and can't even reach the point in their minds where they can make sense of what's true and what they would like to be true, then they're always going to be confused, or they're going to have their reservations that they inject into whatever they're teaching the kids, just because the indoctrination is so strong they can't separate themselves from it long enough to teach others.
Yeah. Like I agree with Brewer Brian, which I'm going to put a shout out for him because I haven't seen him in probably like a month or two. Brewer Brian 420. I met him at the Reason Rally in March, and I hung out with him and his buddy for a while. It was a good time. But Brewer Brian said that if they're going to teach creationism, they should also teach the Hindu creation story and all the other creation stories in all religions. So basically, that's what I was saying. So
Whit, go ahead and come
which
back.
is never going to happen.
Yeah, third and final point. This is my last point.
Sure,
and it ties in perfectly with exactly what you guys were just saying. And to be clear again, I'm not saying teach creationism as a jumping off point, first to grab their interest, and then to talk about basically all the things you guys just said. That, well, okay, if we're going to talk about creationism, kids, which version of creationism, and go into the topic. Mm-hmm. And again, the most sophisticated of the ID movement don't even say teach it alongside. They don't even say that anymore. The most sophisticated ones have conceded even that, and they just say, well, just talk about the controversy. Just teach that there's a controversy. And again, to be very clear here, there is no controversy in science, but there is ostensibly a controversy in the public sphere, and that's okay. So the third and final point, though, is that exactly what you guys were saying, that instead of, if we go about it, if we kind of discourage, it's a shame that we discourage even talking about it, because then it kind of fuels that creationist propaganda that, we don't allow people to question things, and it is just kind of a dogma that kids have to accept. And that's, like you said, the complete ass-backwards method of science that gives kids completely the wrong impression about what science is.
Correct.
It's an investigation that you can test for yourself, and it's all about that kind of personal investigation. And they will learn by themselves, whether or not their line of investigation is valid, and that's the true value of just teaching science, teaching that aspect that it's a method that you can investigate these claims on your own, and you don't have to believe what the teacher says. Yeah. You can do it yourself.
Like I said, guys, I want to make this clear on my viewpoint is, like, even if you say, okay, if you use the U.S. Constitution, if you use Kitsmiller versus Dover when it comes to creation, what I'm saying is we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We will say to the Christians out there that want creationism, at least a Christian viewpoint, Christianity viewpoint, throw it at them saying, okay, you want to teach, you want to do this? Okay, well, we're going to teach all viewpoints of creation, including evolution, and see how they would take it. They will not be happy with it. They would say, nope, the Christian view is the right. Well, guess what? Then it impedes on or intrudes on or violates the U.S. Constitution. It's never going to happen, just like Kitsmiller versus Dover. So again, there'll be another lawsuit, and this will go to court again. They'll bring up Kitsmiller versus Dover and just say you're wrong. So it's just another tactic they're trying to use, and they're trying to get go through the loopholes to just try to get away with it, which they won't get away with it. They won't. It's going to take a long time, but they won't get away with it. Go ahead. Negation. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, just like I think the thing that Whit alluded to that I really find as the valuable aspect of this is that if you can highlight the difference in the methodology and, you know, how I feel about science and, you know, my background, all that, once you can understand, even as to some people as subtle as that difference is, once that clicks in your mind, you'll never think about things again the same way. You will absolutely question everything that comes out of any person's mouth. At least if you're, and I'm generalizing, everyone's like me, of course, because I'm the normal one, which, yeah, we get into big trouble there. But especially the people who love to learn. They're not going to sit there days and days and days on end memorizing Bible because it's the truth. They're going to question those passages and hopefully come to the realization that, wait a second, there's not a lot behind this. And like Matt was saying about, it's going to be tough and it's almost going to be impossible to implement, is I think what Matt's point was making. I agree, but I do think that there is value in trying to expose kids that, like Whit was saying, has an interest in it to begin with, and then using that, and I'm going to use this term, even though I know I'm probably going to catch hell for it, to manipulate or to make the person understand that the thought process that's behind that belief system is not, let's say, accurate. It's based on a premise that you know the conclusion before you ever go in. So again, on one hand, the implementation, I don't know if it would ever be realistic, but if we ever could, I agree with Whit that it definitely would be something that would be valuable. We could definitely use it to enlighten a lot more people.
No, I totally agree. I know what you're saying.
But, no, I'm good. Go ahead.
But yeah, it's basically just like you use the concept as in if people don't like it, if they don't like that they're not teaching a creationism school, you know, you can homeschool your kids, but I'm totally against that too, because the kids won't get the correct information they need to survive in society. So we can go on that aspect too. But I would hope they would ban, you know, homeschooling. I hope they do. But you got kids that are just mentally, you know, disabled where they need homeschooling, you know, that's a different story then. But if it comes down to where you don't agree with the viewpoint on the way science is being taught in school, especially when it comes to creationism, that's wrong now. The kids should stay in school and there should be no homeschooling. I don't know.
Let me jump in. But one thing real quick, just before we move on too fast. Dirtmaster had a really good point, and I want to get this out there. There's a book by Dawkins out there called The Magic of Reality. In fact, I have that book and used it.
I haven't got it yet. I got to get it.
And I use it. I used it this summer with my daughter to bring up science and all of that. So that's exactly what he does. He uses every religion to demonstrate how science differs from religion. And I'm telling you guys, if you've got kids, or even if you don't, it is a fun book. It's fun to play with. The concepts are in there. I mean, it's great. So I highly recommend. I mean, it's Dawkins, of course. So go get the book, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's what I got. Like Randy Brush said here, live life homeschooling is better than what we have now. I guess say I agree and disagree. My stepkids, I used to look at what they had to do mathematically, and the way they have to do math now is more complicated than when I had to do math back in the day. They make them do division, all this stuff, very different than what we're used to. The way we used to do division and all this mathematical the way we had to do mathematics back then was very easy. It was very simplistic. But nowadays, it's more like you can't do division this way anymore. You have to do it this, and it's more complicated. So what that does is that makes the kids' brains evolve into some kind of more advanced mathematics, which is really cool. So there's always some aspects that are good for education, but there's a lot of bad aspects on education. But like I said, I'm still on the fence on that. I really haven't did too much research on the homeschooling aspect, which we might do a show about. We might do a topic about that on education. I think that's a good idea on homeschooling, and creationism, and evolution, shit like that.
That's what I was going to say. I think Whit's, if I remember right, man, your degree's that focused in that area. Can
Is
you
this
speak to that at all?
Is this Whitman from Germany? Are you the same guy? Oh, okay.
No, my handle's based off of Ludwig Wittgenstein philosophy.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I will be graduating here pretty soon. So, yeah, that's why I say I come at it from a educational standpoint, because, I mean, the research does show at least that kids are more likely to engage with the material in a meaningful and more significant way than if they're genuinely interested. And the great tragedy is that we, on one hand, nobody wants them teaching creationism flat out, and but the tragedy is that, like, if we get too afraid to even talk about it, because then we're really squandering a huge opportunity, in my opinion. That, again, yes, does come down to implementation, and I'm talking ideally, I guess. So.
Yeah. What is your view on homeschooling?
Homeschooling, it completely depends on the homeschooler. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just like with the education system. Like if I said if they ever implement all these other religious aspects on creation, and then you had evolution, you would have to have a teacher that's educated in all aspects, and it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
I'll say this about homeschooling, though. The thing you cannot, the one thing that is actually pretty bad about it, regardless of who whether or not your parent is a good homeschooler, is that you're really missing out on what I consider to be one of the most important aspects of education and schooling, which is the social aspect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is far too overlooked. I mean, that really is, in terms of, like,
That's a great point. The social aspect with kids and friends and making friends, because the kid, when he sits home, he doesn't meet friends, maybe somebody next door or something like that, but...
Matt, hey, since you went to school in the States, and I'm assuming that...
So you know, we got 3-4 minutes left, so go ahead.
Okay.
We'll do closing arguments in a minute.
Have you seen any, how do you feel about the schools in Canada? Have you seen any just...
World's better. Their world's better. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, and granted I went to a really poor school district. When I was in 11th grade, they gave a test to the 12th graders, which was my brother's class, it's like a graduation test. You had to pass it to be able to graduate. I think something like 35% of the class passed the test. So when it came to my turn, they didn't even give the next year they didn't even give the test. So I have a very low opinion of the U.S. school system on my personal experience. I understand there's better school districts out there, but I think that a lot more of them are similar to what I'm describing than anyone likes to admit. So it's all well and good to have the teachers understand that they're supposed to teach evolution, and for us to plan and imagine the way that the education system should be. We can't get too far away from what it actually is right now, and that this is the next generation that's being educated right now. And the situation is really bad because the teachers don't know much more than the kids. So what can you do? That has to be addressed first.
I agree.
Yeah, and one thing on homeschooling real quick, you would think, for those of you that didn't know, me and my wife both instructed at the Air Force Academy and whatever. And the thing that shocked us both more than anything is, remember, these kids are the elite of the elite. I mean, not only do you have to be just unbelievable in your class, but you literally have to have a congressman or a senator write a letter of recommendation before you get into the school. So, I mean, they're supposed to be the best of the best. And there's a certain percentage of those that are homeschooled. And the thing that we both picked up on almost immediately from the freshman classes is that a homeschooled kid takes so much more effort from the teacher's point, because they're so used to any question they have, any small problem they have, they'll show up at your office and they'll sit there for hours on and on and on. Whereas, like Whit was talking about earlier, is that once you understand that, you're in a class of 20, 30, 40 people, you're going to have to learn how to learn on your own, how to ferret out that information. That's the only negative aspect, well, one of the negative aspects that I see from homeschooling. But that's all I had on that.